In it comes. There goes the shot on goal. It's in. It's in. Jamie Dwyer.
Heavy lifting. Goes up to Graham. Takes the lead. Looks a winner. Draws away from
the Australians have just broken the American stranglehold on this race.
Allana Slater, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. What an introduction. That gave me chills just listening. It's amazing to listen to what people think about you, because you only necessarily understand your perspective of your experience, and then to hear other people and to have that put in perspective for you is pretty realistic. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's what stood out to me I'll always do these, I suppose, CVs, right? And you're a decorated gymnast, but I just felt when Liz told me that, when she'd written that to me, I thought that, to me, that's almost more important. That's most important.
Absolutely. I mean, results last a lifetime on paper, but they don't tell the story of who you are as a person and who you are as an athlete, because they are two totally separate things.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm more proud of as you go through your journey. And what I tell athletes is be proud of the person that you are when you come out the other end, and who you were during the journey as an athlete to your teammates, and also to yourself and your team that are surrounding you.
See, this is the person that we're about to get to know. And to me, that is amazing to hear. So I'm going to do my absolute best to share with the world the person you are, and the things you stand for. Now, I know these things, but many people won't. And so tell me this. Who are you? Who is Allana Slater?
Golly, that's a really open question, Mark. You've left it very wide. Who am I? I think the thing that I want people to remember me by is that I have so much passion for my sport and for the people that are in it. And that goes for athletes, coaches, officials, even administrators as well, because the people that are in sport, they truly love the sport, and what they want is for everybody to have an amazing experience. And so I want people to remember me for being passionate about my sport. And part of that is being a trailblazer for breaking the glass ceiling for women's artistic gymnastics. But part of that is how you handle yourself on the floor, and always see people look at you and go like, she was always diplomatic. She always was, I was always so happy when people achieved their best, regardless of whether I was on the podium or not. And so that's what you want people to remember about you as an athlete. And that's what I want people to remember about me.
Yeah.
But then also that, just kindness is so important in life. And so being kind and passionate about what you want and loving to the people around you, that's what really matters to me.
Oh, love it. All the feels right at the start. Tell us about a young Allana. From what I understand, it was just a little girl who loved her family, loved gymnastics, and loved life.
Absolutely. I started kindy gym when I was 16 months old. So I was really young. Now, I had sudden infant death syndrome, but my mum revived me multiple times, so 15 times a day. So
what?
Yes.
That is wild.
So that's how I found out, I love gymnastics, because Princess Margaret Hospital at the time said to my mum, look, if you're worried about balance and coordination, just take her to kindy gym. And that's what I did. She took me to kindy gym, and honestly, my little eyes just like wide open. Like, I can practically remember, the smell, the feel, what it was like to go into the gym. And it was like, don't hold my hand as I'm walking on the beam. Like, I'm this 18-month-old in a nappy and a leotard, like, yeah, I'm fine. And I fell in love with the sport that I never knew would change my life and shape so much about who I would become as a person. But it also gave me so many life experiences, but also qualities that I would gain as a child that I would never have thought I would have, but then also set me up for my adult life.
Talk about lemons into lemonade. Like, you turn that and I can hear it. Like, you've been retired for a fair while, but the passion is just bursting.
And look, it's an amazing sport. And I think, everybody, no matter what sport they're in, they think about, obviously, the pinnacle. They think about the Olympic Games. They think about the World Championships, World Cups, whatever that sport level is at the top. But for me, it's the grassroots. It's the bottom of the pyramid, because that's the most important part of every sport. Yet you need the top to inspire to get more kids in. But actually what kids learn in the journey along the way, and no matter what pinnacle they get to, it's about what they learn about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what I always look back on when my career is I think, what did I learn about myself and who I am? And it developed me more than I would have been if I had never have done gymnastics. And it wouldn't have mattered if I got to the Olympic Games or not. I still would have learnt all of those qualities, and I still would have learnt a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always take out of it and always talk to athletes. It's not always about the end goal. I'm not an Olympic champion, but I pushed myself. I pushed my boundaries. I went further than I ever thought I could, and further than Australian gymnastics had ever thought we could at the time.
Yeah.
So, that was just all winning.
Yeah. I can't wait to address when you say further than anybody thought we could, as Australia, but as an individual, I will get there. And I'm talking about 2003. I think that was a huge moment. But what you said then, I think I really need to speak to you about this, because you and I, we have a similar love for sport. We know its importance, but we're in a world, we're in an interesting time. Like, we're dominated by technology, reclusiveness almost. Is that a word? Reclusivity? That's what I'm getting at. Where it's actually hard to engage in our communities, or it's harder and it's easier to shy away. How important is community sport?
Oh, I think it's the most important part of community, because yes, there's a health aspect. Of course there is. There's always, childhood obesity is on the rise. However, for me, it's a little bit about the health part, but it's also about people feeling connected.
Oh, that's it.
But like I spoke before, they're feeling connected, and there's a shared experience, but then there's also, they get to find out who they are, who they really are. It's very hard to figure out who you are sitting behind a computer, because you can say anything you like, but there isn't that human interaction quality. I'm not, we're sitting here today looking face to face and we can see each other's emotion. Whereas on a computer or Instagram or TikTok or any of those other social media platforms, you're not necessarily getting to see the human on the other side. And whether you're still commenting positive or negative, you're not getting that human interaction.
Yeah.
And that's what you get in sport. You get that shared experience of, going for the same goal. Like, you're on the soccer team, you're all going for the goal. And when you get it, that elation isn't just purely for yourself, but it's actually for the whole team and your fellow humans around you and your friends and the camaraderie and that mateship that Australians talk about. You don't want to lose that mateship. We're known for it as Australians, so we have to keep it, and community sport is the best way to do it.
Yeah. How are we possibly going to fit all the amazingness of Allana into like an hour? Like, I just don't get. Anyway, I'm sitting here in awe. Let's talk about the connectedness and interaction with each other, because your journey hasn't been easy. No. And I suppose the greatest stories, they don't come with ease. They never do. But you were ID'd at an early age, as people often are in gymnastics. But I want to know about your relationships with your training groups, because it's a shared experience, but it doesn't make it easy. No. And you had a really tough journey.
I did have a really tough journey. I think for me, I guess I stood out a little bit, and I think that's the thing that's hard when you're someone who stands out, because I loved what I did.
Yeah.
To me, I was breathing gymnastics. I was getting up and I was living and breathing gymnastics. That was my happy place. This is where I felt the most comfortable, the most at ease. And I just loved learning new things and pushing the boundaries. But it also made me a bit of a target. So I did experience some severe bullying for many years. And we did manage it between my parents and myself for quite some time. But I got to the point where I was coming home crying, and I started losing my love for the sport. And that's when my parents said, look, I think we need to actually, step this up and escalate it a bit, because nothing was off limits for me. I got bullied about anything and everything, my personal appearance, my choices of how I like to train, whether I like to chat or not chat. It was my hair. It was going to a different school. It was my parents. Anything they could pick on.
How
it
old
was
are we talking?
viable. Oh, look, I was probably 7 when it started.
Yep.
Dad died when I was 13. So I think we're about 10. So it was a good 3 years. And I remember I remember the moment we'd gone and done a performance at the Wildcats. So like a halftime show. Like this is exciting stuff. We're like these teeny tiny little like 9, 10-year-olds, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. And we're going out, in front of a packed stadium in halftime. We're doing this amazing show. And like I loved it. It was learning. It was a fun way for us to learn to compete, right? But without the nerves of competing our big skills.
Yeah.
We were doing, for us, basic stuff.
Yeah.
We were on a hard court. We couldn't really do a lot of our big skills. So for us, it was actually quite easy, but we were learning how to be a showman, how to be out there, to become a character, to portray someone that we want to portray and get it to, Fred in the very top tier so they could actually see what we were doing because we weren't 7-foot basketballers. And I remember coming home from that and I got in the car and I just started sobbing because anything and everything was being picked on that day. Anything I did, how I performed by my teammates that's supposed to be there to support you. And
these
when
are all,
I came out...
Sorry, these are all people in the training group?
In the training group. So they were my training partners.
Yeah.
And, like we're all kids and kids can be rough on each other. But it had gone to that next step where, when nothing is off limits, it starts to eat away at who you are and your love and your passion. I just didn't want to go anymore. And I said, I just want to quit. And that's when my parents were like, okay, this is not Allana. This is not who she is. She lives and breathes the sport. I'm the kid, back then, pre-internet, ordering the International Gymnastics magazine. And it arrives in your mailbox, and you got to wait a whole month to get any information about what's happening in the world or, I'm replaying over the VHS that's probably died now of the same competition and over, it's just when that's been killed, that something's up. And my parents, my dad actually knew your dad, Wally, very well. He was in the sport of rally car driving and my mum was his navigator. So I came from a lot of high competitive and definitely way more risky in their sport. And they just said, look, hey, we're just going to go to Wally. And your dad had an open door policy at Wace and he just went in and said, look, well, we have a problem. We need to sort this out. And he was like, you know what? No worry, Clive. We'll just get in the best experts that we can. And we're talking the 90s. We got a bullying expert in to help everybody who was there. So it wasn't just myself. It was to talk to myself about strategies and what it was and how it was to work through it emotionally, but also then to give me strategies in the gym and outside the gym. And then the girls got spoken to about how that's making me feel because perhaps, younger kids don't always understand that maybe it's a game, but in fact it's actually hurting. The words are actually hurting and cutting into who you are as a person. So, it was trying to help them understand that, in that development stage of childhood. But then also the coaches from another aspect and how they could, one, identify it better in the gym and understand it. Kids can be very cruel and they can be very deceitful and manipulative about it. So they can hide it very well. And so they would then have more strategies in their belt to then notice it, make changes. So they would change up the training groups a little bit more so that I wasn't always with the same group of girls all the time and just identify where there were issues. So, they were given the best that they could at the time. Yeah. And look, it started to reduce, but ultimately it never really fully finished until they had finished in the gym. And it's, it's hard, but it makes you stronger as a person because I know that it was never me that was the problem. I was just being me and I had to just accept that, don't let it affect me personally. It's not a personal attack. It's more a reflection of how others are feeling. Yeah. And so that's probably one of the greatest things that the experts and my parents spoke to me about. And I just worked through it and I came out the other side stronger, but I don't forget what that feels like because I know it affects me to this day. I know I struggle to make good friendships and strong friendships because there's always that little seed of doubt that people will turn around and use my words against me. And so that I know that. So I have to understand that as an adult and say, I understand that that's what I'm feeling, but that's not the case. They are not the same people and reflect on it and move forward.
There's a lot to take from that. I am given just such a smile to hear that, that your family reached out to dad, my dad, and that they did that. But, the main thing I'm smiling about is your perspective on it. So I think I'll only ask you one more question about it, because you've answered most of it. But what has it done to you? Like, depending on when we take that this bullying started, it's about 30 years ago. And it's still so vivid in your memory. So that's what hits me.
Yes.
30 years later. But you seem to have a really good perspective. What's it done to you as a person? And what do you take from that as an adult Allana in as we sit here now?
I think what it did to me as a person, it made me really doubt. Sometimes it makes me doubt who I am. So it made me doubt who I was then and that I could fit in. And as an adult, that's how it affects me, is that I feel like sometimes I don't fit in with my peers because I'm not quite sure how to identify. One, I had a very different childhood living the journey that I lived, but also I'm never quite sure if people take you at face value or, people, social media is a big one for this. People have this perspective of you and not letting that rule who you want to become. And so I just have to remind myself that that's not how people view me. I'm not an oddball. I'm not an outcast. I just have to keep reminding myself I am not the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, 11, 12, 13-year-old when it happened. Gain some perspective and move forward. I can mature with that. And it happened to me, and was it unjust and unfair? Absolutely. And I don't want other people, I think, talking about it, it's never about placing blame because, kids, they've got to grow, they've got to learn, and some learn in different ways. But for me, it's more about if I help one other kid out there that goes, you know what, I'm feeling that and I'm experiencing that, but actually I can still be successful. I don't have to let it attack who I am as a person. Just remember, you're fine as you are, as the individual that you are, and everyone is allowed to be different, and it's okay to follow your own path. And I think that's what I get out of it as an adult.
That's exactly the reason I'm so passionate about this whole series, is because I think so many concepts transcend sport. That they're perfect because, especially as a teacher, I saw bullying. I know it exists. I experienced, I saw it as a kid. I saw it as a teacher. And so that's why, I feel it's so important.
You're never going to get rid of it completely, right? No. This is society and it's the human nature. You see it in workplaces, in adults. Yeah. So we know it happens. It's more about talking about it, identifying it, and making sure it doesn't affect your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and that it's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling this. We just need to work out why this is happening. And, strategies can be put in place to change what's going on in that workplace or within that sporting environment or within the school. I think the biggest challenge now is that you got the social media. So it's never gone, right? So when I left the gym, it was gone.
Yeah.
Yes, the girls all went to school together and I went to a separate school, and it gave them time to discuss and talk about how they were going to be with me that day. But ultimately, I got to go home and there was no social media. And so that's what I really feel about kids now. Like, just put it down.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what other people think.
Yep.
Put it down.
Look, this is great. As well as sharing some of our states and countries' greatest Olympians and their stories, it's this exact concept. I love doing this series because, there's people who might feel a little lost, and not just kids, I think adults as well. So the concept of identity is something that just struck a chord with me when we had a chat. And we're in a time, like you just mentioned, where we're given so many damn images of what we should be and what we should aspire to, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is. I had written two things. I'd written a lot down when we chatted, but there were these two things that you said to me. One was, you got to be you. And the other I had in quotes was, be your own hero. Yeah. It seems to me, did you have a pretty good idea of who you were pretty early?
I think I did. I think I really, because I loved what I did, I knew who I was. I was Allana. I went to the gym. I was a gymnast, but I was also Allana who went to school, and I was Allana at home. And so I knew that there were separate people. Yeah. They were just facets of my life. And so I had to really learn early, one, to separate them, but to just be confident in who I was. Like, it was okay. I was missing school right from year one.
Yeah.
So it was that, but that was okay because I was pursuing a dream. And as that went through schooling, the more I missed, the more I had to be okay with that and stay true to who I was, regardless of whether people like whether you're going to amount to anything or not. You know, sport's not for life. No, but it can shape who I am for life.
Yeah.
Was where I really went with it. So I knew who I was, and my parents were so instrumental, both of them, that you just got to be who you are, and it's okay to be different.
Yeah.
You don't have to go with the trend. You know, I never wore the clothing trends. I never went with the trends of the leotards in the gym. My grandma made my leotard. So I always had that sort of, it was always coming at me that it's okay to be you. It's okay to be different. You don't have to just fit in with the mold.
Yeah.
And so because I got that in every facet of my life, I just accepted it and moved forward.
I love it. And so that's where this, I'm still laughing and just in awe at this next bit, but I won't pretend to know the ins and outs of gymnastics. But from an outsider's perspective, as somebody, I'm hand on heart. Hand up. I'll own this. I'm a once in 4 year gymnastics watcher at the Olympics, but it feels to me like a very proper sport. Like everything feels, meticulously crafted, choreographed. It feels a bit rigid. It sort of reminds me of like golf. Like it's quite, the etiquette is strong and stuff like that. So I almost choked on my coffee when we were together when I found out what happened at the 1997 Australian Cup, where I think anybody listening will do the same. In the middle of a routine at a major competition, you pause. And for me, this is like the Allana Slater identity. You pause, you look the judges directly in the eye and you wink at them.
Totally.
Like, tell me about this, because to me, this is wild. I'm like, this is gymnastics. This is proper, like, winking at the judges. Like, I was just like, what the hell has she done? Was it planned? And how did this come about? How do you feel about this?
Well, so we've got it. Well, nowadays in gymnastics, obviously being a judge, artistry is such a huge component, and there's so many deductions you can have on floor and beam now. But rewind to when I was competing, yes, there was artistry, but you're talking about if you could get your start score out of 10 or 10.1, which the maximum was 10, but you always had a little buffer in there, everyone was starting from the same point. So you had to not only be perfect in your execution, as close to it as you could, but you also had to make yourself stand out. Now, I'm a little Australian, I'm like tiny, I'm 14. Okay, I stand out because I got red hair, but what made me stand out as a gymnast? What was I going to do that made me stand out as a gymnast? And I remember it was actually 98. So it was after the Commonwealth Games.
Right,
after the Commonwealth Games. And, I'd had my sort of first success at a big international competition, winning gold and 2 silvers. So Australia Cup, I came in and I remember there being this Russian gymnast there, and she had, long arms, long legs, and she had this presence on floor, and she had Pink Panther music. So just all these things I remember, my vivid imagination and my memory. And I was like, I'm never going to be that. Like I can never be that. So what can I do to set myself apart? So I didn't tell my coaches. So
oh my gosh.
This is just Allana, 14-year-old Allana, like, what am I going to do? So I was competing just 2 events at that competition. So I had the beam rotation to just figure out what I was going to do. So this is like mid-competition. I've competed on bars and I'm on the side, I'm going through my choreography and I'm just keeping warm. And I'm like, wonder if I could do that there. This is my choreography here. Wait, I'm looking at the judges there. Oh, maybe I could wink at them. I didn't know all the rules then. Like I was pretty good at knowing rules, but I didn't necessarily know all of the rules.
No.
So I'm just thinking, make myself stand out, Allana. Just go with it. And so I get there in my middle of my floor routine. It's right before my 3rd tumble pass, which was the hardest tumble pass for me to perform.
Yep.
And I just I go for it. I'm eyeballing the judges and I just wink in the middle of my dance. So I'm dancing and I'm like, and they just, I think they were just like, what?
Yeah. Did that just happen?
But I didn't take too long because my music was going and all I thought then, in the milliseconds, I better stand on my feet for this time.
Yeah.
Better not do this being right out there. And I didn't realize at the time, but Jo Richards, my main female coach, she was actually standing behind the judges. Anyway, she came off, she's like, good job, da, da, da. And then she ran over to somebody and was like, is she allowed to do that? Because none of us really knew. And I think it's from that point on that I got known for my artistry. So not only did I like to perform my skills, but I always had that moment with the judges.
Yeah.
So I had that floor routine for a couple of years. And then I had another floor routine for the Sydney Olympics, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And so again, I had to find something in that floor routine. I did utilize the wink again in that routine because it was just the perfect moment to wink at them. And I've got this amazing photo from the Olympics of it. And then when I went into my next floor routine, obviously I'd matured by then. So I had to think about a way to portray that wasn't now a wink, but how was I going to portray not only my floor music and the character, but really knock the judges off their seats, really. Because, it's part of it is, you're performing, you're a showman, and it's not just the judges, it's the whole crowd. It's a three-dimensional arena, so you have to think about it from all perspectives. But I have to draw the judges in so that, in my mind, maybe they'd stop writing for a few seconds. Maybe they'd forget to write a few deductions down. Who knows? I'm a judge now. You don't forget. But my 14-year-old brain, that's where I was going, And maybe just for a moment, because it hadn't really been done that much. Nobody, I'm sure there were some gymnasts out there that were brazen enough to do it. There's Svetlana Kukinas of the world. But I was like, you know what? Why can't Allana Slater from Australia do it? Why can't she be brazen enough to do something that is something that people don't think you should be doing, but why can't you?
And I love it. This is sort of how I got into this identity chat with you, because this is Allana Slater, and I get this strong sense. That's why I asked you the question, that you know who you are, and you did then, and you're like, yep, I'm going to wink at the judges. Yeah. I'm 14, whatever. I think this, Allana, was just a glimpse into what was to come. We've got this gymnast, but we've got this person that is like, I am who I am.
Absolutely.
And you're going to see that in my gymnastics. I think it's why Liz sent me the message she did. She's a trailblazer. Her character came out. Because, it was just a glimpse. Tell me we spoke about the 2001 World Championships, and there's so many aspects to gymnastics. But you were like, hey, this outfit, this is something that I had to consider. And I was like, stuff it, I'm going to do it. What was the outfit?
So we obviously wear leotards. And most of the time back then, we see amazing, beautiful leotards now. But this is sort of that early days when we didn't use a lot of glitter. We had a few diamantes, but it was sort of a bit more, I guess, in a way reserved, right? So now competitions, they do these big entrance things as a team, and they choreograph this little space, and the arena's dark, and it's lots of fun. So gymnastics has moved forwards. They've stepped forwards and made it a lot more fun and enjoyable and relaxed on the competition floor. But I was in that era where, yes, it was probably a bit more like that sort of golf etiquette.
Yeah.
Everything was very, this is the way it was done, and, you don't stray from this section, you don't do this, you don't do that. So it was very rule driven, which we are still, but the competition floor feeling has really relaxed. So it was still quite a stressful environment. And something that I always performed better, which I identified early, when I'm relaxed.
Yep.
When I'm happy in my place where I am, the more stressed I was, the worse I performed, the more mistakes I made because I was in my head too much. So I had to be really relaxed. And my coaches were great at knowing this. So I was, the chat athlete. I'd come off and I'd chat away. And I got to know my teammates, obviously. I was very aware of who liked to chat, who didn't like to chat, who needed space. So you've also got to be very mindful of the people around you, which was something that I was always very much onto, trying to be a little bit more aware in their, that sixth sense, okay, they need a bit of space. Oh, I don't want to talk to them because they're not in the right place right now. So that'll just annoy them more.
Yep.
So obviously it was with my coaches that would, Nikolai Lapshin and Jo Richards that would help me. And then our national coach, Peggy, she also knew what I was like on the floor. So when I got to, I guess, this new floor routine and this artistry, so I'd already sort of started budding out to be someone who was following that artistic line. I remember, first of all, choosing my floor music, and I spent, this poor choreographer, she had an entire, her entire music collection. She was a rhythmic gymnastics coach at the time. So she had an incredible collection of music and all very out there, you know, from all different ranges. And I said no to everything. And sometimes I'd be like, no, after like 3 bars. She's like, can we at least listen to a bit more? No, that's just not it.
She knows what she wants.
I knew what I wanted. So I ended up at, you know, back in the day of, you know, CD stores.
Yeah.
I was at Wesley in the city and in where the Wesley Church is. And I'm just listening to music and I'm skipping through. And I was getting a little annoyed because I thought, how can it be this hard to find something that I love? Anyway, I knew the movie Moulin Rouge had come out. Yeah. I loved Nicole Kidman. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something on there. So I put the soundtrack on, and although this song's been around a while, it was this version that spoke to me. And as soon as I heard the first 4 bars of El Tango de Roxanne from that album, I was like, this is it.
Nice.
This is it. This is the music. I'm not having anything else. And of course, then we had to go through the rigmarole of like getting words taken out, cutting it. Wow. We did have to get it re-orchestrated on an organ, parts of it. So I trained with words in my music for a while because there was no other way. And then the first cut came back from my national coach, and I got on the phone, I cried, and I was like, that's not it. That's not the cut I want. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I felt bad saying it, and I think that's why I was upset. But it meant so much to me that I was like, I'd always been a part of the decision making, but never taking full ownership over it. And so this was, you know, as a 17-year-old, this was my opportunity to take full ownership. And so part of that, once I got the cut that I wanted, I was like, I need a leotard that goes with this. So I pushed the boundaries so far in this leotard. I don't think there's been many more leotards since then that have really pushed the boundaries. Like, it was proper rhythmic style leotard.
Yep.
And it was a purple velvet, and then I had lots of, this is back in the day, glitter, not diamantes.
Yeah.
And it had some diamantes on as well. It was very heavy, but it was a high neck and it had to represent the music and Moulin Rouge and El Tango de Roxanne. We all know what that's about, sort of the red light district. So I was like, I had to go all in.
Wow.
And so everything was covered, and I had obviously sheer material everywhere else. But yeah, I was really pushing boundaries. And I remember getting a comment from an Australian judge, overhearing a comment, I should say, not directly to me.
Yeah. Who
does she think she is? Like, well, just being myself is what I felt like saying is, I'm trying to portray a character. Like, you see that in ice skating, and you see it in rhythmic gymnastics and acrobatic gymnastics. They all wear leotards that represent the music and the theme they're portraying. Why can't we do it? You know, at artistic swimming, it's all the same. That's brilliant. If I'm only competing on floor that day, I'm going to wear that leotard.
Yeah.
So, I debuted at the 2001 World Championship, the floor finals. And, I think everyone was just like, whoa.
Wow.
Whoa, that's wild. And I remember having number 11 as my number. So, like, we cut it down. You're not allowed to cut numbers anymore. I'm sure that's because of me. I'd cut it down because it was taking up too much of the beautiful pattern on the back.
Yeah.
It was zipped all the way up the back. It was a high neck. Yeah, and everything, just everything was being covered where it needed to be, and it had all sheer everywhere. And you wear an under leotard, so everything's fine. But it was really pushing the boundaries at that stage.
Well, that's who Allana Slater is.
But then, you know what? People started coming out with more fancy leotards after that. And it was kind of like, actually, why can't we do this? Yeah. Why can't, as athletes, we take more ownership over what we're wearing?
Again, trailblazer. Yeah. And like, I will leave this sort of concept there, but it's perfect round out to finish. When you say you overheard, who does she think she is? Your answer is, I'm me.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, that is awesome. This next part, I did have an idea of where I wanted it to go, but I actually just sort of want to speak openly and honestly with you about it. One part of me is coy to mention my experience because this isn't a story about me, but then the other part knows that it's a really relevant link to your story and to our story. And it lets anybody sort of listening know the connection that on the journey that's been somewhat shared. So you knew my dad quite well from your time at Wace. As we touched on, he was the director. You were Australia's best gymnast, in that program at the Institute. I felt really warm when you spoke so glowingly of him in our chat and then again earlier today. But when you explained his influence on your life, it was awesome. So I lost my dad when I was 14. And only in the past year have I really, truly learned the impact that had on me. There's so many ins and outs to that. You know, it's
Yeah.
a fundamental age. And then I find out that you lost your dad at 13, also in a sudden and unexpected way. Please feel absolutely free to pass on any questions I throw your way. But look, I know we've chatted openly and honestly about this. So I want to explore this time because that is a fundamental age of growth, of development. And, you know, that's a critical time in life. So tell me about your relationship with your dad, because I still am. I smile about it. I understand you were pretty close.
Yeah, we were really close. My dad traveled a lot for work. So when he was home 100%. So he was, you know, he'd let my mum, he'd just say like, you know, Barbara, stay in bed, get some rest. And, you know, I'll get Allana ready for school. And this is just the epitome. Like he'd just to get me ready for the gym in the morning and get up and he'd get my breakfast, and which like normally I'd get myself, and he'd spend time with me and chat to me about, you know, what skills I was doing. And they're like, here, out comes the fork, because you want to like describe what you're doing.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know, this is my head and this is my feet and I do this. And
You
so
were
we
also an only child, correct?
Yes, I'm only child. So I was very fortunate that I had that, obviously, that one-on-one attention from both my parents.
Yep.
So when Dad was home, I had him as my 100% attention. And then, you know, classically, he'd try and do my hair. And being the type A personality I was at the time, I mean, I should have been able to do my hair a bit earlier by myself, but I was just so like strict about how I liked it done.
Yep.
And Mum was really the only one that could do it. And bless him, like
sounds like he tried.
He tried so hard. And I'd be like, oh, there's a lump in my hair. And now I do my hair, and my mum's like, you've got a lump in your hair. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So, you know, it's funny how times move on. But we were super close. You know, obviously he was a competitor as well.
Yep.
And he competed in rally car driving, which is obviously a very dangerous sport. And my mum, being his navigator for a period of time, he knew what it was required for a sport that was dangerous and the concentration and level of dedication that was required. And so he would talk to me about, you know, when he was driving and like being in the zone. So we talked about, you know, is it possible to get yourself into the zone, or is it something that just happens? And, you know, we'd have these long discussions about it. And we're like, I'm 12, you know, but, you know, you don't underestimate the ability of a child and their mental capacity to take on information. And so, you know, we talked about it because I had to really view it like an adult, because that's how I was going to learn to compete.
Yep.
And I remember the last day I saw him it was Father's Day, and it was state championships. And so I competed. He'd flown home just for that day. And I competed at the state championships, and we had a young girl who was billeting with us from Victoria, and she unfortunately had a very bad accident and had to go to the hospital. So my mum went with her. So Dad was left not only to watch but to video, which was a bit of a disaster.
Yep.
Everything was around, yay! Around goes the camera, where goes the vision. But you know, we'd been talking about a lot in preparation for it, because there was that learning how to win. So I won state championships, and it was all very exciting because, you know, I was 13 and it was the first time I'd won anything in my state at that level at junior international. And, you know, I'd overcome that, you know, the nerves that come when you're competing, because I was competing a very big program at the time at 13. So I'd put a lot of new skills in my routine. So it was about overcoming not only the fear of actually doing well, but the fear of failure as well. So it's both.
Yeah.
And this is something we always spoke about. It's so people often think about it's the fear of failure, but in fact, I think it's more the fear of success, because it's easy to fail because you make a mistake and you get back up and you go again and you go again and you go again. But actually learning how to win and deal with that throughout a competition, and that mental aspect of it, every rotation that goes along, how you mentally prepare for the next apparatus, because it does affect how you approach each one, that's the key. And this is what he would talk to me about, is just putting everything aside and doing it like training and competing for yourself and not for the outcome. And I remember he printed out this beautiful poem, but ultimately the outcome of it is, you've now learnt how to win. The world is your oyster. So that was the last day I saw him, and the last on Father's Day, and the last thing he basically said to me. And I got it in a lovely little framed, in a frame in my room. So I kept that for a very long time when I was competing. Yeah, I've still got it. It's packed away in a drawer, and he'd done back in the day, he'd done a whole PowerPoint thing to be able to print it out, so the effort to go not only to just print it out, he'd actually typed it out, put it into something that would, a format that I would be attached to as a 13-year-old. But to me, it was really about learning how to win, and that now opened the door to success. And that always stayed with me, because that was something that every athlete struggles with throughout their career.
That's really special. It is really special. So let's go to 1997. That's the year?
That's the year, yeah.
You were in Colorado Springs, I understand.
I was,
so 13-year-old young girl competing in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that time?
So I'll just rewind a little bit. My mum was like, Allana can go, just let her go by herself. And Dad, because they were going to go on a holiday together, because they're working holiday. And Dad was just really insistent that my mum went and watched. And she was like, she's fine. She's traveled multiple times. She doesn't need me there. He's like, no, I want you to go and watch, tell me all about it and what she's like. And so to the point my mum was like, fine, I will go. Like almost an argument, basically.
Yeah. Chill out.
I will go.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that he pushed that, because it would have been a very different experience from what I'm about to tell you. And so I'm there and I'm competing. I compete on the first day, and Junior Pacific, it's called Pacific Alliance then, now called Pacific Rim Championships. And we compete vault and bars the first day for juniors back then, and then we would compete beam and floor the second day. So in the first day of competition, vault was my weakest event at that time, and I worked really hard, and Dad and I had done lots of work about mental preparation to overcome something that was so challenging, and to have that resilience to just keep the tenacity to keep going on at training and trying to push my boundaries. And I remember walking back after competing my first vault, and I just can't explain it, but I literally forgot how to run. And it sounds like the most ridiculous thing in the world, but honestly, I could not think, how did I start my run? How did I actually run down the vault runway? What was the tempo? What was the pace? Like something happened inside me that I was unable to do it. And I ended up getting a 0 for my second vault, which meant I got an average of like 4 point something. So like there was kind of like that opportunity to do well in the competition, in the all around. It was gone.
Okay.
And I was sobbing, like more than I would normally, because I was normally good at keeping my emotions in check in the competition. And Nikolai was checking in on me, and eventually he's like, let's just go do a good bar routine. Let's go do the best that we can. And I was obviously sitting there like, how am I going to remember how to run for my bar mount? Like I can't remember how to roll down the vault runway. How am I going to remember how to do that? And I was almost perseverating on it, which is just like constantly thinking about it. And Nikolai's like, just let it happen, Allana. It's okay. Just let it happen. We'll do one in warm-up. We don't normally do one. We'll do one in warm-up. And so we did it, and I competed a great bar routine. Anyway, we finished the day. We went back and, basically I spoke to my mom on the phone and, let's just forget about it. Doesn't matter. All experiences are learning experiences regardless of the outcome. And so let's just move forward. You've got 2 events. You're very strong on beam and floor. Let's just go that way. And I was excited to obviously compete at the time, a relatively new floor routine. I knew I had the difficulty to do well. But I got ready and I arrived at the venue. And as we arrived at the venue as an Australian team, there was like the competition director, the WAG technical director. Nikolai was already standing there waiting. And then there was just other people, and I didn't know who they were.
Okay.
And I remember Kim Dowdell, who's actually on the women's technical committee for FIG, who was the technical director for the competition at the time. And she said, oh, Allana, I just need you to stand here for a minute. Just wait with me.
Yeah.
I just need to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Bye. I'll see you later. Nothing crossed through my mind at this stage.
Yep.
Oh, I'll see you all in a minute. I'll see you at warm up. And so the girls went through the arena, and then, they took me through to the medical area. And so I had Nikolai, and Nikolai didn't know either. He was just waiting. And so they walked me through this medical area, and obviously it's an Olympic training center over there in Colorado. And I was like, maybe something's happened to my mum because she's here. Maybe she's just unwell, or maybe she'd hurt herself. Anyway, I was walking down and then I saw more men in suits, which I was like, that's a bit weird. Like, why are there so many men in suits here? Like,
something's up.
Something's up. And then I saw my mum and I was like, oh my gosh, nothing's happened to my mum. And I knew instantly something was wrong with Dad.
Okay.
And something had happened, but I didn't.
When you saw your mum?
When I saw my mum and she was okay and she looked upset, but obviously so I ran to her and gave her a hug. And then we went into this small room and like my mum tells me Kim Dowder was in the room. I actually don't remember her being in the room. I remember Nikolai being there and obviously Mum and myself. We were in this small space and I don't even think she finished getting the words out. But, Allana, I need to talk to you. Something's happened to your dad. His plane has crashed. And she said that doesn't look like anyone's survived. And I remember screaming like just that, a guttural scream that it just came out. There was no warning. There was no there was no other response. It was just this gut immediate response. And I was like, but are you sure? Like, are you sure everyone has gone? Like, it can't possibly be. Like, I didn't want to believe it. And she was like, yeah, Allana, like, there's definitely no chance that anyone survived. And, to find out, I guess I found out more details later. But, when a plane flies into the side of a mountain, no one survives that. There's no chance of that. There's no chance of anyone surviving flying at however many kilometers per hour into the side of a mountain.
Where was it, by the way?
It was in Medan in Jakarta. So he was flying from Jakarta to Medan in Indonesia. And, there's, obviously there was lots of stuff that went on. I mean, probably one of the hardest things I've had to do since I was an adult is I actually had to listen to the cockpit recording.
Oh, my God.
And read the transcript to do with some proceedings. And that's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do is go and listen to the fact that they almost knew they were going to crash. There was no way out. And I was like, my dad had flown that path so many times and he would have known that they hit trees first. Okay. Like everyone would have known. Yeah. And when we looked at the timing was when he was crashing was when I forgot how to run down the runway. So there was this somehow, some way, whether you believe it or not, there was some level of connection there that basically, I knew. My body knew. Yeah. My mind didn't know, but it was something that, it was almost like he was saying goodbye. And, that's probably one of the hardest to know that he knew. And the last thing he thought about was probably my mum and I. So, that's hard as an adult with children now to think about what would that feel like. But, I know he's always looking down and there. And so the first thing I had to do was pretty much get back on a plane and fly back to Australia. So, I had to learn pretty quick that I couldn't let fear block what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so, we forgot my passport. That was with the team manager. I got to say goodbye to the girls and, I didn't want to tell them what was happening. I just had a family emergency. Yeah. And I tried to look as composed as I could because I didn't want it to affect the girls for competition. And we'd already lost a girl to injury. So our team was severely affected and, off we went and collected everything up. And my poor mum had washed her clothes the night before. So she packed like completely wet, sopping clothes. Oh. I got into the country without a passport, like in the back way. It was all organised, but it was it was such a schmozzle. And I had some really lovely pilots on a couple of those flights that they actually, back in the day when you could go into the cockpit and they explained a lot of things about it, which I think actually was really good for me personally to understand what happens in a cockpit as well. And, it took time for me to fly by myself. It took me 2.5 years. I had to find the right moment to do it, not going to a competition. It had to be coming back from something relatively innocuous that wouldn't affect my training. Yeah. And I got there and I still wear that locket to this day when I fly. And, I knew he would never want me to let fear drive whether I would be successful in the sport that I was passionate about or not. And so I had to deal with it. And it doesn't mean that it's gone. It doesn't mean that it's forever out of my mind. I just have to deal with it each time and let that be okay to be uncomfortable.
The first thing I want to respond to is thank you so much for sharing that. I couldn't help but think of, if you're anything like me, those immediate after moments are very blurry. But I vividly remember those exact moments, and to hear you relive yours is that's confronting. And they're so vivid for you at that immediate point. So I really appreciate that, and I think everybody listening will. That is something ridiculously hard for a 13-year-old person to go through. So like we could honestly talk for a couple of hours about how important this is and the lessons. But I guess overall, I want to ask, how important has that moment been for you? And importance doesn't necessarily need to be a good thing, but I can see your power, your passion. I can see your resilience. And I suspect, having gone through a similar thing, perhaps it's made you who you are.
Yeah, I think it really shaped who I was from that moment. So, I always thought I was a relatively strong individual. But I think after that moment, as a child, once you've lived through probably the worst trauma I wouldn't discount many other traumas, but that's one of the worst that you can experience as a child, is to lose a parent. And to experience that and then give a eulogy at his funeral really, I guess, cemented in my mind, and probably also my coach's mind, that I had an inner strength that I probably wasn't aware of. And so I guess it was about, how do I utilize what I've learned about myself to transfer that into my gymnastics and into other areas of my life. And, sometimes I don't always get it right, but I try to utilize that strength as best as I can, and that ability to compartmentalize, because from that moment on, I lost my dad competing at a competition in the sport that I loved. So I had to learn how to compete again. Like, it wasn't just, I just go to a competition. Now I had to learn not only to fly on a plane, to overcome that fear and deal with that fear forever, for all my life, but also to learn how to compete and separate those emotions, those negative emotions. I had to learn the competition is just competition, and how I was going to distract myself and keep my mind off that, and learn my new way of competing. And so I did that with the help of my mum. Was probably the biggest person that helped me through that. And then my coaches on the side that learnt what helped me on the competition floor. So, that's, I think, helped shape me. It also taught me a lot about, you have to sometimes sit uncomfortable with those emotions, and it's okay to sit uncomfortably with them and to feel them and to go through them and not to hide them. I spoke earlier about, I saw an athlete get out of a pool one time, and they got asked about their dad who had not long passed. And I remember saying to my mum, that's going to be me if I ever make it. And I had to be okay with that. So I had to be able to be okay to share my story, but also show my vulnerability, that it's okay to get upset, and it's okay 25 plus years later to still get upset, because the emotions never go away, and you never get over it, in quotation marks. You come to terms with it, and there'll be times in your life that it will rear its ugly head and you'll feel more emotional about it, like when I got married, when I had my first child, and when I had my second child. My dad loved children. And I always have to remember to talk to them about him as they get older, because it's okay for them to know who he is and who he was. It's okay for them to know that he's passed. Maybe not yet in how he passed, because that's something I have to go delicately with, because I don't want them to have a transfer of fear.
Yeah.
But I want them to understand who he was to me and who he was to my mum, and celebrate his life and what he achieved, and take on those qualities that he had. So that's sort of, I guess, the positive I try and take out of it, is that I still have that ability to share who he was and how important he was. But to sit uncomfortably with it as an emotion, and it's okay to be vulnerable about it. It did affect me in a negative way that it was very hard for me to emotionally let someone in. So I guess when it came to meeting a partner, I found it very hard to emotionally let them in because it was so much easier to just compartmentalize and shut them out.
Yep.
And
Is that from a fear of abandonment? So
I think so.
The knowledge that you can suddenly lose something or someone you love?
Absolutely. And I think that's, although I didn't necessarily do any formal grief counseling,
Yep.
I had this amazing ballet teacher who I did ballet all the way up to I was 16, or 20 actually, at home. And, she was amazing. She really did help me. But it was, with mum and I just talking through, we talked about him all the time. And then there was times when we were like, you know what, I just need to go away. Like, hi, Liz, we're going away for the weekend. We need space.
Yeah.
Because I needed space outside of our home, which was a very emotional space.
Yeah.
But for me, I only took a week off the gym. And people go like, oh, you went back too soon. But no, it was my safe place. Although it happened when I was at a competition, it didn't happen when I was in my training space. So I was going to something that was consistent and steady, something I loved and something I could have a positive experience about and stay on a positive trajectory and a positive path. And it gave me something to, I guess, commit and dedicate myself to. And so that's where I guess that commitment and resilience came from, was to continue going through the path that I always wanted to go on and not let fear stop me and not let a life experience be the hindrance. So from that perspective, I think that's, what I got out of as such a tragedy in my life. I still had to get something out of it to go forward, to live a full life, not driven by fear.
I really admire, I'm just in absolute awe of the way that you're able to articulate that and what it's meant to you. I give you a thank you from my perspective because, I certainly take something from it as well, but it's awesome. I just love that you are beaming when you speak about him and, the fact to not let that go, which I also think is really important. My God, I cannot wait to talk about the Olympics. And then I've got my last couple of questions, but it would be remiss not to mention 2003. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll finish on the Olympics. Because Australia had never won a medal at the World Championships. And of course, gymnastics dominated by Russia, Romania, China. Little old Australia, what are we ever going to do? But there we were, led by our trailblazer, Allana Slater, in 2003. This is a really special one for you, isn't it?
It is. It's something I actually never thought would happen in my lifetime as an athlete. And, I guess we burst onto the scene in 99 as a team. And I'm talking specifically about a team competition. And, we'd come fifth at the World Championships in 99. And everyone was like, whoa, where did Australia come from? And then there was the pressure of the Olympic Games. So we fast forward to 2003 and, we've got a new generation of girls. I'd become team captain and was trying to find the best way through how to be a team captain and consider everybody and get the best out of everybody on the competition floor. And, the rules of the sport change every 4 years. So, that also makes, a huge difference in the competitors. So part of this particular competition, they had changed the rules to a 3-up, 3-count scenario for the team. So qualifications, you had 6 in a team, 5 go up and 4 scores to count. So a 6-5-4 format.
Yep.
But in team finals, when you start clean slate, 3 up, 3 count.
Oh, wow.
It is high pressure.
Yeah.
Now, they never used this format again, the one I'm going to tell you about, but this one World Championships. So you would start at the back and you would go in, compete your apparatus with one other team competing, and then you'd go and walk all the way back to this back competition hall, which was in a demountable tent, I might tell you, with air conditioning in Anaheim. So, you're trundling through in your leotard, and the way it worked, you didn't have even spread of time. So normally it would be sort of very even spread of time. But this time they'd done it and I don't know how they had done it, probably by draw. So we started on floor with America, in America. So they started on vault. So we went in, we competed floor, 3 up, 3 count. I remember doing my first tumble pass and it was like carpet to carpet. And I bounced back and I was like, oh, no, I'm not quite out yet. Thank goodness for that.
Have a quick peek down at the line.
Yeah, just peek. I had a little quick peek and then we continued on. And then we had not a bad crossover time between floor and vault. went to vault, but we knew that our crossover between vault and bars was very small. So it was essentially something like somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, which, in gymnastics is not that long at all.
Yeah.
So we competed on vault. And you got to remember in this scenario, 3 up, 3 count, the teams, we all warmed up on the competition equipment in the main 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
And then we all ran out the back just keeping warm. So I had enough time to finish competing vault. I'm running back. I'm taking my gym shoes off, my gym socks off. And like the girls, there was a couple of girls that weren't competing those apparatus. And so they had like my hand guards ready. You know, I'm trying to run back. I'm trying to get, you know, all my preparation, my under strapping, because I'm allergic to strapping tape. So I had to use other stuff. So
it's reminding me of like a Formula One pit stop.
Oh, it was literally a Formula One. I'm trying to get that on and still get it good and then get my wristbands on. I got my hand guards on. That's all I had time for. I got back to the main training hall. Didn't even get to touch the apparatus. The other girls had already warmed up.
Wow.
And I came out to the arena. I was like, well, I guess this is why I trained for cold turkey routines. This is why I trained this in the gym, because I haven't touched the apparatus for at least 2 hours, probably 2.5 hours by now. Cold turkey routine.
Oh my God.
And I did the best routine of my life. Like, I think I was in the zone. I was in the moment. I was like, well, this is what it's got to be. I've got no choice. So out we went.
Radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance of what was there. And of course, America's on beam. And so we had good atmosphere, which was really good. And so we come back out. And so we're finishing on beam. Like, nobody wants to finish on beam. Like, who wants to stay on a 10 centimeter wide beam for their last apparatus? Like, it's high pressure.
Yeah.
So I'm the anchor girl for every apparatus at that stage for that particular competition.
Yep.
And so our first 2 girls went up and they did a great job. Small mistakes, but they stayed on the beam, which was 3 up, 3 count. The goal is to stay on. You may not hit your most perfect routine, but you fight. And you have to make quick decisions along the way, like split-second decisions. And they did such an amazing job.
Yeah.
We had one more experienced girl up and one very new girl up at the time. And they did such a wonderful job. So it comes to my routine. And I'm like, we've hit 11 for 11.
Wow.
Like, I'm it.
Yeah.
This comes down to me, like whether we stay in I didn't know where we sat at the competition. I didn't have time to get my handguards on, let alone look at the scoreboard.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about competing, and we're the first 2 teams to finish. So we actually have no idea where we are, and every team's finishing on a different apparatus. And so we are on beam, and I would never normally do this, but I had to because the beam was facing the floor, which it never normally does. Normally it's sort of side on. And I knew Carly Patterson was about to finish doing her floor routine, and she was from the USA, and they were absolutely going wild on the other events. So like a green light goes up, I've got 30 seconds to get up. I kind of like try and take my time. I'm trying to compose myself and take a big deep breath and let those nerves kind of just sink in and form a formation. So I get up on the beam and I start my first lot of dance, and I'm like, I'm going to have to look to see where she's at her floor routine. Like, I kind of knew her floor routine a little bit, and I knew she was about to tumble, and she'd already done one tumbling pass, and they went wild. And so I took a moment, I did a pose, and I looked up, which I never normally do, which is a bit nerve-wracking because, you know, to break what you normally do is quite challenging.
Yep.
And it's very risky. And I looked up, and honestly, I am so glad I waited that moment, because no joke, it was like in a cartoon where you get 2 cymbals and the cartoon character has been hit with cymbals. It was that loud. It was a cacophony of sound, and it was so instant from the moment she landed.
Yep.
So thank goodness I wasn't in the middle of jumping for my full twisting flip. Like, it just would have thrown me. So I'm thankful I took that moment. Then I was like, right, get on with the job.
Yep.
So I do my full twisting flip, and like I'd committed. This beam routine, it was about commitment and going full on. And I did my full twisting flip, and I jumped, and I was like, I am so crooked. I don't even know if I'm going to land on the beam.
Oh my God.
And the girls were standing behind me, and they told me at the end of the routine, like, they didn't think I was going to hit the beam. They thought I was going to flip off the beam completely. And I was like, jump left. Like, I make it sound like I've got time to think. Like, I'm talking about there's no time. This is just instant
that's what's
reactions.
in my head. I'm like, you've got like a 1/10 of a second.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
it's crazy.
And I'm like, just jump left, Allana. Jump left.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, jump right slightly. So I was like zigzagging. Probably didn't look that bad, but It felt that bad.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I landed and I didn't even wobble. I was like, oh,
Nailed it.
first connection I've done. And then as I'm going, Carly Patterson's finished her floor routine. And so I'm about maybe a third through my routine. This is so loud. And they start chanting, USA.
Oh, yeah,
and I'm like, this is insane. I can't even hear myself think. So normally on Beam, I have just keywords. One keyword can mean a whole thing, but just one keyword for each set of triple series that I did.
Yeah.
I couldn't even hear myself do that. It was that loud. So I'm like, breathe, Allana. So I was talking to myself way more than I would normally. So everything's completely different to what I would normally do. And then I had a little wobble on, so I went front aerial, front handspring, and I was a bit wobbly. I was like, nope, choreograph out of that. So I took a skill out because at this point I was like, don't take a chance, just stay on the beam. 12 for 12 is all we need to do. So in that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm going to break my series. I'm going to go with a lower D score, like all in a split second.
Yeah.
I did my note. I'm like, just going to a nodie to pull up, and I just pulled up tight so I wouldn't get a deduction. I would go with less deductions is better than trying to go with full D score and having more wobbles, which would result in a lower score. And so as I'm trying to do my my dismount, it is so loud, and I land, and her score came up for Carly Patterson from USA.
Oh, yeah.
At the time I landed, well, I took it as they were cheering for me. They totally weren't. But I did this big, NCAA style, big head release, huge. And I was like clapping, yeah. I was just thrilled we hit 12 for 12 routines. Like that was amazing. Yeah. And they were thrilled because they were about to win a gold medal probably for the first time because they'd put a massive score out.
Yep.
So, and I was waiting for my beam score. I was like, well, actually, that was pretty good. Like it was better than I thought.
Yeah.
So we finish and we sit down, USA and Australia. And then as we're going through the competition, we're sort of watching the teams finish. I see Ukraine's falling a lot on beam, like everyone fell.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Romania popped up under the USA. USA was very excited. And I'm just sitting there innocently thinking, yeah, we're going to drop down in a minute. And then I realized we're in the last rotation.
Oh.
There's literally only China that could beat us.
And you're in third.
So we're in third.
Yeah.
And China's on floor. And then the first girl did okay floor routine. And then the next girl had a fall or a mistake. And then the third girl fell on a dance move. And I was like, oh, no. I was like sitting next to Jackie Dunn, who I'd competed with a few times since 99. I was like, Jackie, do you think she'll get enough to beat us? And so I'm just sitting there thinking, oh, no, that's ridiculous, Allana.
Yeah.
You don't even know what sort of buffer they've got. And I didn't sit there and calculate the math. And all of a sudden her score flashes. And I swear I saw Australia drop to fourth. But I blinked and there we were, third. And we looked at the USA who knew they'd won gold because they knew no one could beat them for quite a while. And they were so excited. And then the tears came, flooding tears, just the joy that I could be a part of that historic moment for Australia, that we'd proven that we belonged in the world of gymnastics at that level. And, some of the young ones were like, yay! And there's Jackie and I woo!
Because this is something that nobody ever thought we would do.
Just didn't think it would happen in that time frame.
Yeah.
In my lifetime as a gymnast, having burst on the scene in 99, that's not many years later to actually get to that level of win a bronze medal. And particularly, it's a sport that's judged. There's always, opinions based in there. And as much as the code does its best to, be able to be as black and white as it can, it can't. We're in a judged sport. And the nature of it is that there will always be a slight difference between judges. But, to think that happened and then to do the media afterwards, they were all over Australia, asking us way more questions. So, it was just probably the moment that really warmed my heart the most because it happened. And I remember saying to P. Liddick, our national coach, I just never thought this would happen when I was still competing, and to be team captain, such a proud moment of the girls and how they handled themselves on the competition floor in such a high pressure situation of 3 up, 3 count. The girls were amazing in our team and they did a wonderful job, and we really should celebrate it more than what we do in our sport.
That's really, really special. I knew it was a really important moment for you. So, one of the two massive events that we were talking about. And so the only other one is I say the only other one, the Sydney Olympic Games, and we've got two issues or two incidents, I'll say, to talk about with this. Now, in preparing for today, I watched your floor routine, which we had spoken about at the Sydney Games. And spoiler alert, by the way, if you ever want to see somebody smile who is it is the epitome of a girl or a person, it's the epitome of a person living their dream. Your smile at the end of that routine, my God, it filled my heart. But I also have ADHD, right? And I ended up in this rabbit hole of listening to versions and versions and versions of I Still Call Australia Home.
Yes.
Because I knew how proud you were of that song. So that is the song that was playing during your routine. Sorry if I got the terminology wrong.
That's all right.
I Still Call Australia Home at your home Olympics.
Yes.
As an Australian girl who is performing at Sydney, but this wasn't a straightforward song to get up.
No.
So incident number one is I Still Call Australia Home on the floor at the Olympic Games. How did it come about and why was it so controversial?
Well, I was honoured really to be offered. Our national coach said, she wanted 2 patriotic floor routines in the team. One, it was, symbolic of that I was likely to make the team as well. Of course, you always have to earn your place, but it was symbolic that I was, likely to make that team. So Trudy McIntosh got Waltzing Matilda, and then I was offered I Still Call Australia Home, and I just jumped at it because what an iconic floor music to have at a home games. I Still Call Australia Home. And I know like Waltzing Matilda, they're very iconic, but to me, Australia is always going to be my home, and Australians around the world always talk about Australia still being their home and feeling that attachment. And so to be offered something that would mean so much, not only to me, but to the crowd that were going to be in the arena, that's what got me. And so we had a choreographer she was actually from Russia, Irina, and she did a great job. And I just had to make a few little tweaks.
Of course you did.
To make it right for Australia. The whole last section after my last tumble pass, I finished up when she did it in this sort of praying position. I was like, that's not Australia. That doesn't match with me. That's not me. So I came up with the last little bit, the running, and then basically I created this ending pose where I put my 2 hands to my chest, and I kept one on my left hand on my chest on the left side, and threw my right arm out to the crowd essentially. And to me, that was symbolizing my love for you as a crowd and my love for you as Australia, because I'm living this with you.
Yeah.
And this is my passion. So and thank you. And so I came up with that. So when I found out about, I don't know, it was about a couple of weeks before going to training camp, I Still Call Australia Home is, of course, a Qantas song.
Yep.
Now, of course, we'd got all of the permissions from Peter Allen, and it'd been reorchestrated. There was no words in it. Obviously, there was a specific cut because it was only a minute 30. So, particularly when you play it on, like, back in the day on a cassette tape, you had to time it to make sure it was timed, played at the right speed.
Yeah.
But, I Still Call Australia Home was used by Qantas. And Ansett was, back in the day, Ansett was around. They were the Australian Olympic team sponsor for flying us around. And I guess nobody thought it would be an issue, because who would think that an airline would have an issue with a song that is not necessarily owned by them, but by Peter Allen. So that's where you normally get all of your okays from, your tickets of approval. But Ansett jumped up and down, and we're like, no, she can't have it. That's our competitor's theme song.
Yep.
And so, actually your dad, Wally, went to bat for me and was like, she's a 16-year-old girl that has a 1 minute 30 cut of it. So
at her home Olympic Games,
Olympics,
this isn't about airlines. This is about bloody national
Australia.
pride.
So it was just one of those where it's like, I don't even think I know the full backstory to it, other than I got a call from a reporter as a 16-year-old. I'd just finished school, got in the car. Mum's like, just heads up. You're going to get a call from a reporter asking you about this, and Wally's already dealt with it, and blah, 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 blah. Like, she gave me the whole quick insight.
Yeah, right.
And so, like, I had to quickly formulate what I wanted to say and how I wanted to deliver to the media. And, so that's what it nearly never became an Olympic floor routine, which is weeks before the Olympics, like
that's
barely
wild.
weeks. And like to go back to an old floor routine, I've been training this floor routine since February. So to September. It was 6 months.
Yeah.
So, and it'd gone through a lot of transition of the choreography. We had obviously made lots of changes and, to perfect it to what was going to be right and delivered. And it nearly never came to be. And it nearly never ended up on Roy and HG's commemorative video.
I love it.
But there it is, of serving platters and winking at judges. So
before I ask you about incident number 2, which almost transformed the gymnastics world.
Yes.
Just that smile at the end. So I watched the floor routine over and over. Like I felt I completely know why you wanted it. I felt passionate. Like I'm like, this is Australia and we are home. We're at Sydney. I was so lucky to be there. I was not there watching your routine, but I was in Sydney with mum and dad at the games. And even as an 8-year-old, I'm like, this is unreal. Like this is our home games. My question about this routine, at the end, I told you about the smile. Honestly, it just feels so wholehearted. Is that what was behind that smile? You finished it and you were like, what were you feeling?
It was living out my little girl dream. The dream I had as a 6-year-old. I was living the dream. Yeah. I was there. I was, I'd competed on a couple of apparatus already, but, that was my final apparatus. And I was like, I've done it. I've competed at the Olympic Games. This is it. I've just competed in front of 15,000 people. I'm a 16-year-old. And how incredible is this? We're very, formulated and strict in our way in gymnastics. But
except when we wink at people.
Yeah, except when we wink at people. Still within the character of the show.
Love it.
But I guess it was that release because there's a lot of pressure in the lead up to an Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're a young athlete, we went from being nobodies, like I said, 99. All of a sudden the media speculation was, you could win bronze. Like it's not that easy. It's not that simple, right? Yeah. There's multiple times of competition. There's qualifications. We had a terrible draw. We were the first session up at 9 o'clock in the morning, which meant we had to start warm up at 7. Like it's hard to get your body moving at that hour of the day.
Yeah.
So it was just, I think, the release of tension and the pure joy of my 6-year-old self shining through that this is it. I've made it. I did it. Yep. Like I achieved my dream.
Yeah. I loved it so much. The other pretty damn big controversy that happened, and I love that you have a smile because it took a brave 16-year-old girl to stop an Olympic competition halfway through an event and be like, something's not right. It seems wild to me. I think it seems wild to everyone that at an Olympic Games, the vault was set to the wrong height. But that's exactly what happened.
It's exactly what happened.
And how did you realise?
So I mentioned before the vault was the apparatus that I struggled with the most in that time in my career. And so I had spent countless hours staring down the 25-meter vault runway, which I ran from 21 meters and 70 centimeters. So I just knew it back to front, right? It was in me, it was ingrained, what the height was meant to be, what it looked like. Particularly once I started wearing contact lenses, very short-sighted, I could actually see the vault at the end of the vault runway.
Yeah.
So I started on beam for that competition for the all-around finals, and unfortunately I had a fall, and so I knew I was kind of out of the race by that stage, which was devastating. But I still had 3 apparatus to go, and you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. You never know if everyone else is going to fall, and you might just be the best of the day of the ones that had a fall.
Who fell the best?
Yeah, who fell the best, exactly. So I was a bit unaware what was happening in the first 2 rotations. I'd gone to floor, and the crowd had really lifted my spirits, and I felt that sort of surge of energy. And so we rotated. So rotation 3, I stand there, and I'm looking at the vault. I'm the first athlete for that rotation. So we've come up to do our 2 vault warm-up.
Rotation 3, meaning two
full rotations
had already completed the vault.
Completed. My understanding now, obviously, after the competition was that half of that field had fallen, which is very rare for a competition to have that many falls. Half of them had fallen on vault.
Wow, okay.
So, that kind of speaks to like, what is going on?
Yep.
But as an athlete, you will always put it back to yourself. You'll never sort of think of outside issues.
Yep.
You will always go, oh, it must be me. I must be nervous, must have changed my technique. But I stand there and I'm looking at the vault, thinking, it's the wrong height. I turn around to my competitors, of which I had Maria Olaru in my group, and, I was just like, does the vault look low to you? So I guess I rabbited this on for like a good minute.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like trying to concentrate. And they're probably thinking, stupid Australian, be quiet. She's so chatty. Anyway, they're like, I don't know. And I was like, well, okay. Well, I guess I got to go for a warm-up. So I did my vault runway, and being short and having spent countless hours, the feeling I always got when I jumped from the beat board, which was the springboard, onto the vault, which is not like we know it now, it was like a pommel horse but without the handles, was that I would sort of jump into the vault. So that was my feeling as I jumped from one to the other. In this moment, I went down. So I jumped on the springboard and I went down onto the vault, which I had never experienced in my life. So I sort of I did my timer, and it just felt really awkward. And I'd just rewind, I'd had a major fall on the first round of competition on vault. Like I'd landed in a bit of a crumpled mess on the ground.
On vault or beam?
On vault.
Oh, okay.
Oh, in the first round of competition and qualifying.
Oh, yes, gotcha.
So when of course, I'd spent a lot more hours since then trying to get my confidence back up between the two rounds of competition.
Yeah.
And so when I did this, I was like, if that's the right height, there is no way I'm landing on my feet again today.
Yeah.
And I walked up to the vault and was like, it's definitely low. Like it was down at my waist. Like I am not tall, and I was only I was a lot shorter than I am now. So I was only 146 centimeters tall or something then.
Right.
And I was like, Nikolai, the vault's too low. And he's like, get off the mat. I'm like, no. Look at me, Nikolai, look at me. And I locked eyes with him, and he looked at me, and I said, the vault is too low. And I guess I said it with a sense of urgency. And then I was probably a little bit forthcoming. I was like, well, unless I've grown overnight, it's too low.
There's that Allana Slater
There's
attitude.
that my little attitude of I'm telling you, I know I'm right. So he's like, well, what do I do? And everyone's like, just get off the mat. I'm like, okay, I'll just get off the mat. So then I was like, well, you have to tell the judges, Nikolai. So he kind of speaks to the judges, because I, as an athlete, am not allowed to talk to the judges.
Okay.
So he kind of tells the judges, and then the D1 then has to call the competition, the superior jury, and the competition director. And they're like, Alana's saying the vault's too low. And Nikolai's like, no. And then he's going up to the vault and going look, it's too low. So he knew I was right.
He was now on board.
He was now on board. It took him a moment, which it would take any coach.
Yeah.
Taken any coach a moment to actually I had to get his attention, because you got the fans screaming. It's the warm up period. There's lots of noise, and all the other coaches saying, "Get off the mat." So I really had to capture him, and I did, and I'm thankful that I had that relationship with my coaches, that I could not only say something without fear of repercussion or getting in trouble or any of those sort of attitudes, but more that they would believe me, that I would only say it if I truly believed it, that I wasn't crying wolf or any of those sort of
and the courage to speak up, by the way.
Yeah.
You're at a major competition, you're 16 years old, and you're declaring that the vault has been set like that. Yeah.
I know.
It's
not something you think would happen either, right?
No.
So it's not something that you would normally think to question. But in my mind, one, I was like, I'm not going to land on my feet if that's the height of I just knew it was wrong. My gut said it was wrong. But at the same time, I also knew that if it was wrong for me, it was wrong for everybody else. And it was also wrong for the girls who'd competed.
Yeah.
And that was wrong. That was not the correct thing to be happening at a competition. And this was the Olympic Games. This was determining the penultimate winner of the Olympic game all-around finals. It should be right. So, I walk back down to the other end, and the girl's like, what's wrong? The vault's too low. Look, it's too low. You can kind of see in the background of the footage. And all of a sudden, I look back down, and I'm standing there waiting for my second warm-up touch, because they've sort of halted the competition.
Yeah.
And you see the tape measure come out. And then you see the president of Women's Technical Committee for Federation of International Gymnastics talking to the competition director at the time. And then all of a sudden you just see this hand wave, put it up. And so they it was set too low. 5 centimeters makes all the difference for us. It's huge.
Yeah.
The biomechanics that were changed for a lot of those athletes, a lot of scary falls. But, there it was. I was right, and I couldn't believe it. And
How many rotations in total, Allana?
2 rotations had gone by completely.
And
half.
how many in total are there?
4.
4.
So half the competition to compete on the incorrect height.
Yep.
We then got to proper warm-up touches as well. And I guess the biggest question of this moment is, how did it affect the all-around? What happened? Well, I don't think anybody won. First of all, I think the Federation of International Gymnastics, they didn't have precedent. So what were they meant to do? How were they meant to fix this in this moment?
Yeah.
Some would argue maybe they should have stopped the competition completely and started again. And that's probably would have been the fairest option. But how did they logistically do that when the arena's being used for our competition? We had apparatus finals yet to go. We had rhythmic gymnastics, trampoline gymnastics, and the basketball to go in that arena.
Wow.
So how do you do that? How do you logistically change the schedule? I know they do it in Winter Olympics, but they build it into the schedule. So they did, I think, the best that they could at that time. They offered all athletes that had already competed an opportunity to compete again. So they could nullify their first score and compete, but they had to take that score of the second vault, which quite a number of them did. Look, it affected my ranking too. I dropped down the rankings.
Yeah, okay.
But that's okay with me because they got the opportunity to compete on the right height.
Yeah.
And, c'est la vie, that's life, right?
Yeah.
Some people chose not to, like Svetlana Korkina, she chose not to because she'd already then had another fall, another apparatus. And so for her, it was like, this moment is gone,
Yeah.
But I guess some people then ask, why didn't anybody say anything else? I think which I think I answered, is that most athletes would think it's them. They think that it was their nerves, their adrenaline that changed their technique. You would never in your wildest dreams think it would be set to the wrong height. But at the same time, it's also pushed our sport forward. At the same time, we have a lot more strategies in place. We've always got equipment specialists there. And then checking the equipment setup for each round of competition is done differently now to what it was done then. And that's a positive thing. You can only look at it and take what you can from it. The sad thing is that no one really won that day because everyone was affected, not just those who competed in the first 2 rotations, but it changed the whole vibe of the competition.
Yeah, of course. It's like a little asterisk almost. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's a little asterisk, but, that's sport though, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
It's not the first time it's happened. I do believe the 100 yards back in many years ago was actually set incorrectly and was shorter than it was meant to be.
Wild.
So, wild.
Yeah. And look, what stands out to me in that is the integrity that you have. You're like, nah, this isn't right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something. And I think, that's something that we absolutely, even at the highest, most important moment of an athlete's career, you're like, nah, this isn't right. I'm going to speak up. So
Absolutely.
I think it's amazing. Look, we have arrived. I didn't want this to finish, but we have arrived at the final 2, and everybody in this series gets the same final 2 questions. This first one feels really important for me to ask you because you've had a long and successful career in gymnastics, but I can't help but feel you have this underlying theme in everything you do of really strong values and ethics within you that's driven you your whole life. So in preparing for today, I'd noticed, like I had written, this is another thing I'd written in my notes that you'd said to me, is gymnastics doesn't define me. So how important, before we, I suppose this is a slightly offshoot before I ask you what you would say to a young person, but gymnastics doesn't define me. How important is that mantra to you?
I think that's really important because no one's defined by what they do in life, whether it's their job or their academics or any other pursuit that they have. What defines you is the person that you are, the moral compass that you have, and your resilience and perseverance to stick to who you are no matter what. And so that's something that I'm never willing to compromise, is my moral compass and the way I want to be with people and to treat people, because kindness, and I've said it before, is so important and so invaluable in achieving successful outcomes for not just you, but for generations to come as well. And I feel like we're at a very important point in life that's potentially a tipping point that people need to remember, that we want to treat others with that human kindness, with that human factor. because that was the only way I think we can continue living forward as peacefully as we can. There's always going to be struggles and there was always going to be difficulties and conflict. But if we approach it with the most well-rounded perspective that we can and not just our own and understand that human element, then I think that's the only way that we can continue forward as an entire nation and a world.
Yeah. It's shone through with everything you said. That's why I just found that comment so critical, because people will fortunately nobody in this series, but I know athletes that define themselves. In fact, I know not just athletes, people define themselves on their career, and that can sort of be taken away from you. So, for whatever reason. So to have that inner belief is something I admire so much about you. So like I said, this last question feels this is the second last question, feels really important, because you're a young woman who has such a strong sense of self, such a strong sense of identity. You were a young person who had such a strong sense of identity. What do you say? What do you tell a young person who's making their way in this world? And then what do you say to a young person that says, hey, I want to be an Olympian?
I think if I start with the first part of the question, is any young person, no matter what your goal in life is, what you want to achieve, is that set those dreams high. It's okay to strive. It's okay to want to be more than what you are now. It's okay to keep learning and striving and be uncomfortable with the fact that it's uncomfortable to push yourself through those boundaries.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's usually lots of people that believe in you, but you have to make sure that you're one of them. Because ultimately, if you don't believe in yourself, it's not possible to get to the top of whatever you're doing. You have to dream, you have to believe in yourself, but you also have to create it through hard work. So, sometimes there are days that it's messy and it's awful and it just doesn't go your way, but every day's a new day.
Yeah.
Push through it, create it through hard work, be resilient, and success will follow, whatever that is. And success doesn't always mean winning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important is I'm not an Olympic medalist. I'm not even a world champion.
Yeah.
I'm a world championship bronze medalist in a team. I pushed glass ceilings. I broke through them. And it's okay to just strive for what you can do. Be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Whether you win or lose, be the best version of who you are as a person first and foremost, and an athlete second. And I think if anyone's looking to go to the Olympic Games, just pursue your passion. Just love it. Be passionate about what you're doing in your sport, in your life, because ultimately you got to love it. Like you got to look back and go, I loved that journey. I loved what I was doing. Yes, there were hard days. And were there days that I just didn't think I was going to make it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I pushed through because I loved it.
And it's okay to have hard days, right?
Oh, it's okay. Everyone has hard days.
Yeah.
Like nothing in life is served on a silver platter.
No.
For anybody, no matter who you are, I don't think there is a single person in this world who's done any job that has said, well, it was just served to me on a silver platter and it all just happened.
Yeah.
No, they worked for it. They worked hard. They had bad days, but they always tried to find a solution to those obstacles. Sometimes you have to go through the whole alphabet to get to A to Z, but, sometimes you get from A to B to Z, straight line. Then you have to go around. So accept that sometimes it doesn't go to plan.
Yeah.
Be flexible about it and just take the opportunities as they come, because you never know what that opportunity will lead to.
Yep. And my favorite of the lot, Allana. Now, I shouldn't be surprised with this either, because I feel like our minds and brains and person works very similarly, but you almost answered it in that question. Somebody that's achieved a lot, but been through a lot. My question to you is what does success mean to you, and what does it look like?
I think success for me is pursuing a dream with passion, pursuing a goal with passion, and putting in that hard work. Whether you're successful in terms of reaching the actual outcome, that doesn't define your success. What defines the success for me is the journey that you go on, what you learn about yourself as a person, and how that shapes you to become that future version of yourself. Because it's never too late to continue to mold yourself, to dream big, to learn and become a newer version of yourself. I've done it countless times through, going through my career, then learning about myself outside of the gym and what sort of career path I wanted to go through, and going through and completing 2 degrees, and then becoming a mum of 2. So I'm always open to learning and finding a better way to do something, but just remaining passionate and loving and caring to the people around you, because ultimately people remember who you were as a person. When they're standing there giving a eulogy, they remember you as a person, what you were like with the people around you, and not what your successes were. Because people forget those over time, but they never forget the imprint that they make on each other's hearts and who you are as a person. And that's the most important thing. And that's success to me. Success is being the person that you want to be and sticking with it and being kind and loving to the people around you.
I have loved every part of this discussion, and that seems and feels so perfect. Although I'm trying to remember that perfection doesn't exist. It's something hard to aim for, but the way that you just finished that is incredible. I was nervous to speak to you today. I'm in a good way. I'm always excited for these chats, but I just had that little bit of extra emotion, and not surprisingly, it has exceeded everything I hoped that it would be. You are an unbelievable person. I do feel an affinity, and it feels really special given that you were so close with my dad and that we went through similar things. And I am so grateful that you chose to share that with me today and with us. And I think you will help countless people who I know will be thankful as well. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for spending the time. Thank you for sharing your journey, and thank you for the person you are, because it is really special.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me share my story and my thoughts and my passions for life, because, it's not a platform that many get to have. So I'm really thankful to have it as an opportunity, just because, if you can help somebody else in life, then there's nothing better.
Allana Slater, thank you very much.
Thank you.